In 1992, the world was given Alone in the Dark, and then in 1996, the world of survival horror was realized with Resident Evil. So why wasn't there any sort of copycat or additional attempts at the genre in those 4 years? There actually was. 2, in fact. Do you remember the 3DO? It was a shortly lived console that was insanely expensive at $700 in 1993 money. That would translate to roughly $1,400 today. A very pricey way to kick off the 5th generation of consoles. But why would this cost so much when a PlayStation would launch at $300, a fraction of the price? Simply put, the manufacturing wasn't done by 3DO. Instead, the system was licensed off to companies like Panasonic, who would then take care of manufacturing. However, even with royalties from games up to the top at 3DO, the console couldn't sell at a loss, and was instead sold at a profit. This is a rough summary of the events, but more or less explains the insane price point. Though the cost didn't keep developers away, no, the 3DO saw a bit of a catalog, including a port of Alone in the Dark. But we're here for River Hillsoft's Dr. Hauzer. The Japanese company was mostly known for its J.B. Harold Murder Club games, a collection of murder mystery adventure titles. Going over to a survival horror title isn't the largest jump, realistically. Many similarities exist between the two. Mystery to solve, a central location to explore, and a character tasked with investigating all of it. This time around, our adventurous protag is reporter Adams Andler back in 1952. He's arrived at the manor of Dr. Hauzer, an eccentric archaeologist. Adler made a career off covering the achievements of Dr. Hauzer. So when he drops off the radar, Adler sets out to find him, eventually tracking him down to the game's mansion, which the player must now explore. There are plenty of flaws to this title, but in many aspects it is a technical achievement. Whereas Alone in the Dark or Resident Evil would utilize 3D models and pre-rendered backgrounds, Dr. Hauzer chose something more radical. It shows full 3D environments. Everything from the character models to items and even the map itself is 3D. Additionally, the game sported not just one camera angle, but 3. It could be viewed through the eyes of the protag in third person, or even top down should that strike your fancy. This simply wouldn't have been possible or else very difficult to do in something like Resident Evil. In fact, animations like looking around in first person carry over into third person, and whereas the faces of Jill, Chris, or Carnby were all still relying on head shakes and exaggerated movements to convey emotions, Adler here is much more expressive. He's typically a very suspicious man, always looking around, checking things out, but occasionally he gets some old school Pixar level emotions. Goofy as it might seem today, this had to have been stressing the system something hard. I'm honestly impressed with what was achieved. But in fact, it did stress the system, to the point that any movement of the character plays out slow and sluggish. There's very few moments in the game where it manages to pull off a good frame rate. I will say that I was able to get to grips with it, and during the handful of platforming segments, I rarely, if ever, ran over the edge. Yes, this game carries many aspects over from Alone in the Dark, platforming being one of them. Whenever this comes about, the top-down view is surprisingly helpful. But what else was brought along? Traps. Lots of traps.
What's that?
No, don't!
Traps Illustrated? Freddy!
In fact, this game is nothing but puzzles and traps. There isn't a single enemy in the entire game. Not that there aren't constant threats. Stepping foot into the mansion isn't without trouble, even as a chandelier nearly crushes the player. Entering the lobby, you may be thinking that this will be like the Spencer Mansion. There's multiple doors, some stairs, and a few items to investigate. However, this isn't really what you get here. 2 doors are locked, the stairs are restricted, and the 3rd door leads to your death. The game circles around in its map design a tiny bit, but for the most part, it is rather linear. You will progress room by room and solve your way through. At least the music isn't bad, though there isn't much in the game. The opening has a rather ominous soundtrack, while the title drop feels more like something out of Luigi's Mansion. The OST while exploring the mansion, however, is much more what one would expect. What one might not expect is that after finding a key from the clock, you will happen across a flower pot. Careful, this will kill you, but if you put flowers in it, you can now unlock a painting to find another key. This is basically the entire game. If something can hurt you, it can kill you. In fact, it becomes rather hilarious just how trap-filled the house is. You may go from dart-flinging clocks to drowning in bathrooms, then you just have deception-style axes swinging about. Hauzer had a lot of money to burn, I suppose. Unlike later titles from these devs or the game that inspired it, there isn't any combat. Given the struggle of just Adler being on screen, I suppose that is for the best. One element it does have is wall humping, namely any sort of bookshelf or the like. This can lead to details about what transpired, secret passages, or mission critical items. Speaking of mission critical, you're going to want to nab this for later. You can actually miss it when the game decides it's time to become a platformer. Don't worry too much about dying or having to restart, the game is barely 2 hours as is. While going around, you'll find not everything is as it seems. Corpses and the specter of Hauzer will cross your path. You can tell this game is being made by classic adventure game developers because the biggest roadblock facing Adler is glass. He can't smash it with an axe or throw stuff at it, no. He needs to utilize a shotgun, which looks more like a blunderbuss, and the developers were clearly very proud of this moment. All this leads you around to the corpse, which gives you a key letting you progress through another door. This game really loves keeping you on a straight path, despite appearing to offer many alternatives. You can kind of run around in a circle at one area, especially if you find a hidden key, or just take the long way around. At least I have to praise the game for limiting the player from the end area until they have all required items. Additionally, the ability to save whenever you wish makes the need of doing a full restart basically unneeded. But again, it is a short game. So after having some faith and not running across, you find more rooms. Now I am playing off a translated fan patch via emulation, but far as I can tell, it's close enough. The story is pretty usual fare for these types of things. This mansion is actually built over an archaeology site, a site that would proceed to twist and warp the mind of Dr. Hauzer. He would eventually start killing off members of his own team. Oh, and his wife, she's been dead. You can find a photo of her before descending down to the minecart segment. Now in the end zone, the music has changed and it's time to confront the good doctor. Said doctor is fused with a statue, claiming he is one with the cherub or something. His idea was to become immortal by fusing with a divine being. This would, in his mind, allow him to be with his wife, who he claims was taken by God. While this game is already technically impressive despite its flaws, I wish we had some 90s voice acting to complement everything going on. So, deciding your presence is scaring his wife away, he walks up and slaps you— wait a minute. Wrong notes. He starts throwing balls of energy all around the room like it's a bullet hell. It's not nearly as difficult as holding the wife's photo out in front of you. You march up to him and throw the photo at him, causing a chain reaction of explosions. It's funny to be seeing another mansion collapse, and hey, we noted down the whole thing. So that was Dr. Hauzer. It's not what I'd call a need-to-play game. In fact, I will likely never spend another moment thinking about it, outside of remembering it for the first fully 3D survival horror title, and those impressive facial animations. It was ambitious, to say the least. Look, if you're a person diving into retro gaming or a survival horror fan looking for it all, the hour or two you'd spend playing Dr. Hauzer isn't all that worthwhile. If you really want to, it's harmless. The game simply feels more like a proof of concept than a full game, impressive as the tech for the time was. It's just a very short, not very difficult, and rather simple little puzzle game. Most of the deaths weren't even particularly good. I never felt like I messed up, but more that the devs intended trial and error for the player. I did enjoy my time though. I'm happy to have sat down and played through it, for a trip through history if nothing else. This is one time I would suggest giving the doctor a house call.